Hi, this is Ashley,
And this is Kristen.
and this is 1,000 Miles of True Crime. Hey, everyone. So I'm excited because today I'm going to be covering a case that I was shocked not a lot of people knew about. I know when I brought this up to you, Kristen, you weren't that familiar with it either, right?
You have to refresh my memory. Please tell me what
Yeah.
you're
Okay.
what
Do you
you're
not even know what
covering.
I'm covering? Okay. So everyone, guess what? I'm going to be covering the Amityville murders. And everybody knows about the Amityville horror story. I think a lot of people have seen the scary movie and stuff. So I just assume that everybody knew about the actual DeFeo murders that happened. So as much as it kills me, I'm not going to go into the haunting stuff. I'm just going to stick to the actual murders. But you were one of them too, right, Kristen? You were like, oh, like the horror movie, like the scary. You didn't know about
I,
it.
I was. That's what I remember. So I apologize that I could not remember specifically what you were covering, but yeah, I mean, I don't really honestly, I think for a while I thought that it was just a movie and that it wasn't based off of anything in real life. So,
Yeah, a lot of people that I talked to either they like just thought it was a movie or they knew it was like based on a true story, but they didn't know sort of what had happened. And so I'm almost going to be covering everything up until the actual Lutz family moves in, and like that's where the actual movies come from. But this is the story of how it happens and why apparently or supposedly the Lutz family thinks it's haunted. So let's dig in. You know me, let's start at the very beginning. And Amityville really was this quaint, it still is. It's this quaint town. It's in Long Island. A lot of people there are middle or upper class and they'll travel into New York City for work and things like that. But now it's really, unfortunately, known for this haunted tale, which I think is really funny because, well, maybe funny is not the right word, but the true story I think is like far more terrifying than the haunting. And this really starts with the DeFeo family. So they were, the seemingly were this like perfect family. And I will start at the very beginning. So with the parents, and this is going to be Louise Brigante, and she was gorgeous. Like people say she could have been a model. And she fell in love with this guy very quickly, Ronald DeFeo Jr. And like he was big, like he was known for it. So people would call him Big Ronnie. And yeah, Big Ronnie was a character. He has this loud personality, and the Brigantes were not fans. Like Luis's parents were like, "Are you kidding me? Like you could have anyone." They just thought he was loud and obnoxious. They were really hoping this was just a fling, but I mean, they fell in love quickly. So no matter what the family did to try to break up this relationship, it just wasn't going to happen. Young love is. They end up getting married in 1951. And as you can imagine, Mike and Angela Brigante were furious. They were so angry to the point that they actually, I mean, they loved their daughter and they stopped talking to her for a while. Like they just sort of cut her off. They wanted nothing to do with her. And I think they were just a little like, I don't know, like, come on. And I think they realized though, like she was in love and she was ready to pursue this life. And unfortunately, like if you're not about it, like I'm just not going to talk to you until she gets pregnant. So, a few months into the marriage, she gets pregnant, and you know how it is. Like then all of a sudden the grandparents are like, well, wait a second. And they become a bigger part of her life again, to the point that they actually bought the house in Amityville, like the famous house. Do you know what I'm talking about? I know you're like scary movies, right?
I love scary movies. It's bad. Um okay, so this house that this all happened in, her
Mm-hmm.
parents actually bought it for them.
Mm-hmm. So they bought them this big, nice house in Amityville, and it's like a lakefront property, so they have access to water. The thing that I don't remember in any of the movies is they also have this really nice swimming pool. So like they would throw pool parties all the time and things like that. But I mean, overall, it's a nice house, and I don't want to say it was just handed to them, but it was just handed to them. The parents gave them the house.
So I have a question. I don't want to jump ahead, but is this house still standing?
Yeah, the house is still standing. I want to say they did like where they changed the address to, everybody can find it. And I think it's one of those situations where the owners, the current owners will say like they still see people like driving by slowly or kind of stopped in front of the house. So still to this day, I think it's, a big, if you're in Amityville, you're going to check out this house, right?
Now I'm also, you've already given away that someone is actually living in the house.
Okay, yeah. So I don't go into that. So let's go into it. So yeah, the house is still standing. People are living there. And that's one of the reasons people argue that the house isn't haunted. And, especially if you live in that neighborhood, you want this story kind of squashed. And so I really wish if you guys want it, I will absolutely do an episode on the hauntings. But apparently the Lutz family moves in there. It's really haunted. This is where everything happened. Like the movies come from. And then ever since then, I think there's been like 4 owners of this house though, and no one else has reported any sort of hauntings or anything. So I don't know if that's just like, you don't want to perpetuate the story or like if there's really nothing going on in the house, but it's still standing. It's still got residents living there. Probably some nice little family just wants the story squashed.
Okay.
So they move in, and not only do they buy them this house and stuff, they're buying them furniture. So they're really helping support the family. And shortly after all of this, they have their first son and they name him Ronald DeFeo Jr. And he, instead of going by Little Ronnie, he usually goes by Butch, or they'll call him Ron. So, and I'm going to apologize, like, try to keep up with me, guys. Every source, honestly, that I was reading or watching, they did seem to call him a lot of different names. So he goes from, should we just go through them now? It's Butch, Ronald DeFeo Jr., Little Ron DeFeo Jr. Like every single one called him something different. But from what I can tell, and like from from actual interviews with him and then interviews like with his friends and things like that, he goes by Butch mainly. So I'll try to stick to Butch, but we're gonna go all over today. So this is like, big Catholic Italian family. We know the stereotypes. So they couldn't just stop at one. They have 4 more kids after that. So they have Dawn, Allison, Mark, and then John Matthew. And
Back to back?
back to back. So I'll go over the ages of spoiler alert, there is going to be a murder. So I'll go over the ages that they were at that point. But yeah, they're pretty close. I think Dawn came about 5 years after Butch did. And then, it was just kind of short, one after another. I think the 2 youngest boys came pretty quickly after that as well. So yeah, no lack of love in this family. But so they seem to all be happy. They seem to be this great family. From all accounts, they have a ton of friends. I already mentioned like pool parties. They throw like 4th of July parties, all that kind of thing. So they were, a well-known family in the community. So there were, we hear this all the time, right? Like with the perfect family, and then you sort of like, pull things away a little and you're like, whoa, here's the gossip. And so the family did have some issues. One of the big things that gets brought up a lot is Dawn. So she was the oldest daughter, and around this time she's 18, and she's starting to sort of fight with her parents and push back. And this is mainly because she has this boyfriend, William, and they're in love. Here's another young love story. I love these. But unfortunately, William and his family moved to Florida. So Dawn, like, they didn't move to Florida and she fell out of love. Like she wanted to get to Florida any way she possibly could. She was constantly fighting with her parents, but they wouldn't let her move to Florida. And, she just thought like that's where her life should be. So, she was a great kid. She was a really good kid. She got good grades. She planned on, after she graduated from high school, going to school to become a secretary. So she's not like this total rebellious daughter, but she's in love and she wants to go be with her boyfriend. And ironically, now the parents are like, no, I've seen how this ends. No way. But that's not the only thing that makes this household, seem a little less perfect once you start digging in. So there's a lot of stories about Big Ronnie. Like, and they're kind of all over the place, from being like really controlling and abusive towards his wife. Like, even Luis's family had accounts of him being both verbally and physically abusive in front of them. So, you know, it's one of those things too. Like, if it's happening in front of people, like what's happening behind closed doors.
It sounds like that might be why too. They didn't really care for him. Maybe he was already showing some signs or something before they got married, and so they're like, we're not on board. We're gonna stop talking to you if you're gonna proceed with this. But
Yeah, yes, maybe they could just kind of see some of the signs there. And one of the things that maybe it's not weird, you know, maybe people grow up and you just get used to people, but he is a really big part of their lives because, you know, I already mentioned they're buying him all this stuff. They're really helping. And I think there's some resentment there, right? Like, I have this awesome lifestyle, the lifestyle I want, but I couldn't have it without my father-in-law, because on top of him giving them stuff, right? He actually gave Big Ronnie his job. Like, he works at the Berganti dealership. So he works for his father-in-law. Later on, Butch would also start working there. So I think, like, you know, maybe part of you is thankful, and then it, you know, it kind of twists a little more. You get more resentful. And he seems to kind of maybe be a little bitter. But that's really kind of just like the, you know, the icing. When we start to get into more, there's other things too. Like, he seems to be how do I say this? Like, I don't want to say crazy. I don't know what it is, but he claims he has visions, and he has like ESP, and he says he's like getting visions from God and stuff like that. And there's even accounts from the neighbors where, like, they would catch him outside. Like, this is frequent. This wasn't like, oh, one time this happened. Like, they would catch him outside praying to statues, but which is weird enough. But then he would be in his underwear. And so then Luis would come out and be like, get in the house. What are you doing? And he'd basically be like, you know, get in the house or I'm going to kick your ass again. It's like, this is happening in the front lawn. And this is like a suburb. So like, everyone can see this. Everyone can hear this. I'm sure like nosy Nancy's like peeking out the window, seeing all this going on. So I don't know. What do you think? Think you can tell the future?
Praying to statues and saying that he's got visions. I mean, I'm not saying like that's not a real thing or whatever, but that would be a bit alarming or concerning, I would say.
Yeah. So also, like, one of the things was he had this vision that something horrible was going to happen to his daughter Dawn. Like, she was going to be in this really bad car accident. So that was like often part of his argument for why she couldn't go to Florida, was because of this vision. But you know, it sounds like, okay, another thing that I did read was like, he would like call his family members in the middle of the night and be like, you know, you need to take cover. There's going to be a hurricane like in Long Island. So, and then it would never come. Like, at what point are you like, maybe there's something wrong with me? My visions aren't panning out. But yeah, he really believed in them. So, I mean, I can tell it wasn't like a huge part of his life, but it did get brought up more than once. So I think like, he had to have been talking about it.
Well, then too, was he having these visions the whole time that they were together, or did it just all of a sudden now he's seeing these things or getting these visions and having these premonitions or whatever? You know, if I'm his wife, I'm gonna think, did something trigger this? You know, now that you're all of a sudden seeing these things, or has this always been a thing as long as we've been together? You know?
Yeah. And I definitely didn't find any like childhood accounts of him like saving a village because of a vision. So I don't know when this started. I don't know how seriously they took it. I really don't know. But it definitely impacted their lives. I think, you know, I brought up that he was known for being abusive. He is also pretty rough on the kids, especially Butch, right? Like, that's the junior. That's, you know, Ronald DeFeo Jr. So I think, and I don't know that that's necessarily it, but I know people personally that are juniors, and they feel like, you know, being a namesake's rough. And yeah, so I think he was already a little harder on it. Plus, it's his first son, so all those things add up. So he was definitely rough on him. but there was all these rumors about, and I don't even know if we could call them rumors because it's just directly Butch and his dad, Big Ronnie, talking about them. But they'd be at like the bar bragging about all their mob connections, and Butch would say how his dad, was super close with all these high people in the mob, and like how they owed him favors and all this stuff. And, at first I think people just thought like, yeah, it's just rumors. But then like, as time goes on, more things are happening where you're like, this is this is interesting. And there's like it's proven that they have multiple connections to the Genovese crime family. So, and many people speculate that Mike Brigante's dealership, that's the dad, so he's the son-in-law working there, that was just like a front business for the mob, and that Big Ronnie was cooking the books, and he was basically funneling money through there for the mob. And we're not sure at what level the grandson Butch actually knew. We actually don't know how much Mike knew either. So it's basically proven that Big Ronnie was a big part of this. And I'm assuming Mike Brigante, it's his dealerships, gotta know something. But all of this information actually comes from a RICO investigation. So like there was wiretaps and there was all this stuff. And like they even got a recording of people talking about how like Butch knew so much, like he could take us all down and things like that. So there was definitely, I think there's definitely was something going on with the mob. I think due to all of these reasons, they probably didn't get to like the bottom of everything, but it definitely seems like there was some money being skimmed and things like that. So
That's
interesting,
very
right?
interesting. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean, the mob. I could see a car dealership being like a front, like you said, but is there any speculation that maybe the mob had something to do with the murders,
Oh
or
yeah.
is that out? Is that totally out the window?
No. Like, you want to just get into it? Let's just get into the murders, right? Let's do it. I'm like, let me take a drink real quick, guys, because this one it's kind of rough. I think if we had $1 for every time I'm like, this is gonna be a rough one. Okay, that's what you guys are here for, right? So let's take it back. It's November 13th, 1974. It's approximately 3:15 a.m. It's 112 Ocean Avenue. This is Amityville, New York. And it can be heard, the DeFeo's dog is howling outside. Like multiple neighbors report this. They're not sure why, but this dog is freaking out. He's out there making a lot of noise. But that's all they hear. They don't hear anything else. But now 23-year-old Ronald DeFeo Jr. grabs his 35 caliber Marlin rifle. And it said that he had a lot of guns, actually. He was like starting to accumulate quite a collection, but that's the one he chose. And he walks through his house. And first he stops at his parents' room and he's just staring there for a while. So they're not sure, like this is his account. Like he's like trying to kind of get the nerve. And then all of a sudden he just shoots his father in the back. So it hits his kidney and it goes through his back. And then he hits him again, and there's another shot to his father's spine, and it actually goes all the way up through to his neck. So it's like at the base of his spine, up through his neck, because he's laying down. And then the mom wakes up, obviously startled, and before she can even do anything, he shoots her twice. So he shot her in the lungs. It like actually shattered her rib cages, not her rib cages, but so then, as if that's not horrible enough, he then walks to his brother's room. So his brother John is 9 at the time, and Mark's only 12, and they're sharing a room. And Mark never moves, but Butch watches this. So he shoots him. He shoots Mark and says he never moves. Then he shoots John, and he says that he doesn't know what was going on, but he was twitching for like a minute. So he just sat there and watched his 12-year-old brother twitch and then eventually die. And they would find that there was a bullet stuck in his spine. So it like somehow severed the nerves there. And that's why he was like twitching and shaking. So next, he walks into his sister Allison's room, and she's 13 at the time. And he says that she does wake up and stares at her brother, but then he just shoots her dead anyways.
Oh my gosh, ruthless.
Yeah.
Eek. Wait, I have to stop you for 1 second because I want to make sure I understood you. Who was having the visions? The son Butch or the father?
The father. So it's not the son, right? I totally get why you'd get those confused. But yeah, and like in the movies, they talk about Butch having these visions and all this stuff. But I couldn't find any accounts of him saying that. Like everyone says it was the dad. Yeah. Because even I was like, well, yeah, he's going through some stuff. That makes sense. But yeah, I couldn't find any accounts where it was him.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
That just threw me for a loop for a second. I'm like, wait a second, what? Okay, so.
No, it's good. We needed a break because we got one more murder. So then Dawn, his oldest sister, she's 18, is actually on the next level up. So she's on the 3rd floor. So he walks up there and somehow, again, she's still asleep and he just shoots her in the back of the head. So in less than 15 minutes, Butch has killed his entire family.
Just gets up in the middle of the night and just does this.
Apparently. So and then at this point, he just takes a shower. He puts all of his bloody clothes and stuff into a pillowcase. He grabs the rifle. He jumps in his car. He drives to Brooklyn. Doesn't know what to do, so he just throws everything in a storm drain, and then he heads into work. And he like shows up to work early, and then he acts surprised that his dad's not showing up to work. And he keeps calling. He's like, "You guys haven't seen my dad. Nobody's heard from him." And he's calling and he's like, nobody's answering. So he's so worried. He's so concerned that at around noon, he leaves work. So he leaves early to go check on his parents, like check on his family. But he doesn't do that. Instead, what he does is he goes to his girlfriend's house and they actually end up going to the mall. They go shopping a little. Then he meets up with his friends and he's doing heroin because he does heroin and they're drinking.
Oh,
yeah, just to like casually slip it in. Yeah, he does heroin pretty frequently. And later he'll admit to doing it that night as well. But so he's doing heroin, he's getting fucked up, he's drinking. The whole time though, he keeps making it a point to be like, I'm worried about my family. I can't get a hold of them. And like, obviously he doesn't have a cell phone because it's the 70s, but he's like calling from his girlfriend's house. He's calling from his friend's house. And again, making sure everybody knows I'm really worried, but like not actually leaving and going. So it's actually around 6 p.m. now. 6 p.m. He's at the bar, at this bar called Henry's. It's down the street from his house. And he's like, you know what? Sorry, guys. I really am worried about my family. I'm going to go run home and I'm going to check on them. And he leaves. And shortly after, he runs back in frantically. And he says that, you know, he seems to be in shock. And he says that he needs help, that his parents have been shot. And him and his friends go back to the house. So they run back over there. And originally, apparently Butch didn't have his keys. So he had to like break a window to climb through. But so they get into the house. He stays outside. He sends his friends into the house. And right away, his friend sees the bodies. He runs back out and he says like, hey, they have another friend, call the cops. And the cops get there in about 10 minutes.
My thing is, why did he go back to where they were drinking at Henry's, you said, right?
Yeah, the bar Henry's.
Good why call. Not just call the police from your house? You're there already. And then now you're going to traumatize your friends and have them go and see your whole family that you've killed.
Yeah, yes, I don't know. Especially too, like, it's one of those things. Like, what was your friend a paramedic or something? I don't think so. You guys were just doing heroin together. So like, what, you know, and I don't know, maybe you think like, oh, like he's just messed up. Like we should go check on this. I have no idea. Like if you ever ran it, I think I would just call the cops first, right? Like let me go check on this. But yeah, they didn't do that. They waited until they got to the house, saw the bodies and confirmed. So And so when the cops get there, they find Ronald DeFeo Jr. there just sobbing. Like he's outside, he's sobbing. From all accounts, like he seems to be really upset. They go in, they confirm that they found the two parents and the two sons. And then someone says like, well, hey, what about the two daughters? So they were even reporting it as 4 murders originally. And it's like, everyone's like, no, you gotta go check, you gotta go find those 2 girls, their 2 daughters. And they go back in and look, and I guess there was so much blood that they first didn't find Allison and Dawn. Isn't that messed up? Is that brutal? It's just, yeah. And I don't know if they hadn't made it to the 3rd floor yet, and that's why they didn't find John too. But yeah, it was that bad that they didn't even find him right away.
I don't know how police works or whatever when they, arrive at a scene or whatever, but my guess is that they would have cleared the house before looking for the bodies, making sure the assailant who's outside sobbing isn't still in the house,
Yeah. I don't know. They
Ugh.
yeah, I think I think everyone was pretty shocked. They weren't expecting this today. It was the whole family. And one of the things that like this is always brought up, because it is a really weird part about the murders, is that everybody was found face down. And so they claim like nobody woke up. Like
from hearing the gunshot of the previous person that he killed.
Yeah, like, do you think you could sleep through that? I mean, it's a big house, but it's not that big. I know, like, with John Bonet, we talked about, like, can you hear somebody yelling in the basement and all those, but, like, we're talking about a gunshot. They've already proven there was no silencer used, nothing like that. You're talking about, like, the bedroom right next door or right below you, and someone's getting shot, and multiple times in certain instances.
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like it depends because now, granted, I don't know like the proximity of the neighbors' houses to their house, but if the people in the house, like these other victims, if they didn't hear it, did the neighbors hear it? Did they interview the neighbors and say, did you hear any gunshots last night? Or is this an area where that is something that you would hear in the middle of the night? You said it's an upper class area, right? So I would think no, but is it near woods? Is it I don't know, like we hear loud things all the time and we'll like stop and look and like, did you hear that? Did you hear that? But then we don't think anything else of it. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not in our house. So I feel
Yeah.
like that's a hard thing to say, like, how did no one wake up?
I just think it's weird. Personally, on the inside, I think it's weird. I think, and they were all found laying on their stomachs, like, and that's kind of weird too. Like most of them were on their stomachs, and the reason I say that is because, like, with blood spatter analysis and all that, now they've concluded that at least most of them were for sure in their bed when this happened. And some people were saying like, oh, well, like, I don't think it's that weird that the whole family slept on their stomach. I thought it was. So I looked it up and only 7% of people sleep on their stomachs. So I do think it'd be weird that they were all on their stomachs, like every single one. But the neighbors, nobody admits to hearing anything. Like they admit to hearing the dog, but no gunshots. Now some people speculate that maybe you thought, like, because there's all these rumors about the mob and things like that, like maybe you heard it, but you're like, I'm not getting involved with that. Like you can put me down as I did not hear anything. Like, please.
I didn't see anything. I didn't hear anything. Who are these people? I don't even know these people. These are our neighbors?
Right. That good family? I don't know. So who knows? Who knows if anybody really heard anything or not? I just think it's weird that no one in the family heard anything, but who knows? So
any question that I mean, I'm a stomach sleeper. Most nights I'm in that position, laying on my stomach or my side. Was there any, I guess, speculation that he moved them in some way after he shot them, like to make sure that they were dead?
So first of all, it's great to know you're one of the 7%ers, but yeah. So They did, and again, this is the 70s, so I think we're a little more advanced than some of the cases we've covered, but it's not today. But looking at like blood splatter and brain matter analysis, there's really only one person that's sort of questionable, and I'll get into that. But they think that possibly Dawn was moved and maybe was not shot there, but everybody else they think for sure was shot in their bed. And they ran toxicology reports and stuff because they really had the feeling of maybe somehow he drugged everybody, which would make sense, right? You're like blacked out on drugs. You're not hearing all this going on, but yeah, they still don't know exactly what happened. And the cops they're trying to figure out what's going on. Like, obviously this is not how they were expecting to spend their night. And they're asking Butch, do you have any ideas? Who do you think would kill your whole family? And right away he says, yeah, I'm terrified. I think it was Louis Fellini. And that was it was like a familyhood friend. He had gotten into a dispute with the family and he was in the mob. And not only was he just a friend, like he actually lived there for a while at the house. And apparently Fellini had helped Ronald, Big Ronnie, build a hidden room in the basement, and supposedly it was full of money and jewels. And yeah, so at this point, the cops are, they're a little worried. They're like, they think like, we got to get him into protective custody or something like that. Maybe this really was a mob hit. Like, we don't know, but if they're probably coming back for Butch if they were, if there's a chance he knows anything. So they were all concerned and they take him to the police station.
So Butch is running with this story. He is really, truly running with it. The mob did it.
Yeah, the mob did it. So while that's all going on, obviously they're also unfortunately preparing for the funeral. So the only thing that I'll say about that is they actually did all 6 funerals together. So imagine you're sitting there, you're sitting in church and you're looking up at the altar and there's just all these coffins in various sizes sitting there. So obviously I think that's pretty traumatizing. Probably for a good reason. They decided not to let the any of the kids from school come to it because there was already a lot of people there. There's already a lot of reporters and stuff too. And then obviously that's just a lot for any kid to take in.
And this is a huge deal in this town because I'm assuming there's not been a crime like this committed ever. So it's bringing a lot of attention, bringing a lot of media. They want to, this is a huge story too, probably. So
yeah, I think no matter what, it was going to be a huge story. I mean, it's pretty close to New York, but it's not New York, right? It's still the suburbs. So I think there's a lot of reasons that this was obviously going to be a media sensation. So the cops are protecting Butch at this point, and they've got him. And it's very clear Butch likes to talk. And they're like, great, let's hear it, Butch. Keep going. Tell us everything. And he is giving them a breakdown. And in his written statement, he says that he went home after work and kind of partying with some friends, and he watched a movie. And he actually didn't go to bed till 4 a.m. that day. And he realized he couldn't really sleep, so he just got up and he went to work early. And then he never saw his family. And he said he did hear someone in the bathroom, and he assumed it was his brother, but he didn't wait to say hi or anything. And and then he just went to work early. So the cops are looking into Fellini. They're taking all angles seriously, but he's not only does he have an alibi, the more Butch talks, it's almost like the more questions they have. He's just the more they get to the story, they're like, do you think this adds up, Butch? And then he'd be like, hold on, let me add to it. Let me keep going.
He's digging his own grave, literally.
Completely, yeah. And I think they're just sitting there silently, and he's just gabbing away. So finally, because he just keeps talking, he admits to, well, yeah, that night I was doing heroin. I do that most nights. And
left that out. You left that part
Yeah,
out.
yeah. You forgot to mention that part while you were watching the movie. So then he says, okay, fine. You guys, you got me. You're pretty smart. So let me tell you what really happened. What really happened is that Fellini showed up with some guys and he made me made me come with him as he walked through the house and he killed all of the family. That's what he's claiming. And then he says, oh yeah, and then he gave me all the clothes and the gun and everything, and he made me leave and go jump it. And basically threatened my life. So I just did whatever he said. So the police they're acting like they believe him just so they can keep him talking. And
Smart. He has shot himself in the foot. I'm sure they've interviewed his friends from Henry's. Like, I feel like I don't know. He's a kid. He talked too much and got himself in trouble.
yeah,
Caught up.
exactly. He got caught up. And so then, he's still sitting there talking. So finally he's like, okay. You guys, you got me. So I did do it. I killed my family. And he said once he started, he just couldn't stop. He had to kill them all. And then he said that he had to kill them before they killed me. But he says they were all defenseless.
Was there any other explanation outside of that, like why he did this, why this night? Was it anything else like
No, I don't have like a clear cut case for you. Like I don't have like this was the day, like obviously he was gonna lose it. Like, no, there's nothing really pointing to like he didn't get into a huge fight with his dad that day. I mean, things were really it sounds like most of the fighting, like leading up to that day, was really between Dawn and the family. Because she wanted to go to Florida and that was causing a lot of fights. But yeah, there's nothing really pointing to why this happened and why this happened today.
like I'm not saying I need, uh an explanation, but like to understand like what would just make you just get up all of a sudden um and do this to your entire family and then try and play it off like you didn't do it.
Yeah, I don't know. But obviously now we've got to go to court. And like what at that point, like what are you gonna argue, right? So obviously his attorney is trying to fight that his client was insane, at least insane at the time of the murders. And there were some weird things that to me, I thought they were weird that really came out in the trial. The biggest thing that really stuck with me is that the chief medical examiner testified that he didn't think it was possible for one person to have committed these murders. He really because he really cited the the lack of drugs in all of their systems, like the victim systems, the fact that nobody woke up, the fact that there was no silencer, all of those reasons. He really did, for whatever reason, did not believe that it was just
One person.
yeah, it was just one person. So I mean, I think that's a pretty knowledgeable person. If he's got questions, then I'm going to support that I have questions too. So everybody was, I mentioned everyone was on the second floor except for Dawn, who would have been on the third floor. And no one woke up, no one tried to hide. So what happened? It was very confusing to them. Butch explains that this was actually possible because there was another shooter.
Here we go, Butch.
I know. It's like, honestly, we wouldn't have a long enough time to record for me to tell you every single story that Butch has ever told. So like, who knows? Who knows what really happened? But now he's playing the like, okay, so I made up that thing about Fellini, but who really helped me was Dawn. And he's saying that his sister, she's 18, she's having issues too. They're both really losing it with their parents. And what he says happened is that like it was pretty much planned. Like he was going to kill his parents. He had planned on killing his dad and his mom. and that he killed them. And then he comes back out and he sees that Dawn, for some reason, has shot all the kids. Like she's shot the 3 younger kids, and he's like, because Butch is really compassionate for the younger kids. So he like loses it on her and is like, what did you do? And he shoots her in the head. So there's not a lot of evidence to support this, but the sort of like, that kind of makes you question it is that they found blood and brain matter like down on Dawn, like on her clothes, and definitely part of her. And she has this huge gunshot in her head, but there's nothing on her headboard. So she has this pretty white headboard on her bed, and there's not a drop of blood on it after getting shot in the head. So a lot of people point to that as being, they don't think Dawn was actually killed there. But
I don't know, like how you, or even at this time, can you even test the brain matter or whatever blood was on the front of her with her headboard being cleaned? Was it her own brain matter and blood that was on her, or at that point, it's up in the air?
Yeah, I'm not sure. They were pretty confident that was her blood. So I don't know. And I don't know, like, did Dawn just wake up and he shot her? Like, you know what I mean? Even if she wasn't shot there, it doesn't actually mean she was a part of it. It just means, he could have then put her back in bed and, put her face down and everything. So I don't know. It is interesting that she was the one that seemed to have a lot of issues, like leading up to this with her parents. But I don't reportedly by Butch's account, she never went after the parents, which like, why would she have a problem with her 9-year-old brother, right? Like the problem would be with her parents who aren't letting her go to Florida.
And then too, like I'm thinking if I'm not saying I would ever kill anybody, but why not just run away? If you want to go to Florida that bad, just go, instead of killing your whole family or killing your brother and sister. I don't get that.
And I mean, she was 18. Like at some point you could just put your foot down and say, I'm leaving. Exactly. I think she probably would have went through the same thing her mom did with like getting cut off and stuff like that. But I mean, they figured it out. You think she could, try, but yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if we should not believe Butch. That's what I do know. That's what I do know. And overall, the cops really weren't buying the story. So I think we probably shouldn't, but there are some questions there. I don't know.
He changed his story so many times. So at that point, it's like, which version of the story do you want us to believe today? I just feel like I agree with you. We should definitely not believe Butch.
Yeah. And he'll even go back to saying it was the mob and that like he just said that because he was just trying to not get killed. Like he was like, I'll take the fall for it. I see now what the mob can do. The mob insists, like they were insulted, they were like, we don't kill children. Like there would have been a lot of ways we could have tortured you. There could have been a lot of ways we would have got a message to you, little Ronnie, but like killing a bunch of kids was not going to be the way. So, I mean, I would say we'll never know, but at least he was convicted. He did go to jail. He was found guilty on 6 counts and he got 25 to life for each of those, for all 6 counts. So yeah, he just kind of lived out his days in jail. Of course, because it's him, there's always some other weird twist to it. And okay, so in all accounts, every account I could find, he went and he hung out with his girlfriend, right? Like I said that. They went to the mall and stuff. So I don't know if this is a different woman or if this is that woman, but this woman came out in the 80s and said that they were actually married at the time of the murders and they have a kid together. And that she's kept this kid like identity completely sealed. And she didn't come out at the time of the murder because she had this young daughter and she didn't want to risk that daughter ending up in the media or anything like that. And Butch agrees. He says, yeah, I have an 11-year-old daughter and a wife. And she's even showed pictures of this marriage license. But the thing is, So Butch's lawyer was like, I've never heard of this. I've like nobody ever brought up his wife while I was defending him or anything like that. And then people like the person who witnessed her, the person who actually signs it, like the judge or whoever. I'm so sorry, guys. I don't know who does this, but the person who does it, he claims that the year that I think it was 67 when it was signed, he claims like, nah, man, like I actually had retired at that point. So even this is like sort of a weird story. Like, these weirdos sometimes spring up, but I watched this whole documentary on YouTube and she had some sort of insider knowledge. I don't know if she had like almost much more than we did kind of just from research, but yeah, she had some stories about the family. And I don't know. So I don't know if he has a daughter running around here, but the identity was always kept secret and nobody was ever able to prove if he was married or not.
That's
And
insane.
isn't that weird? Yeah, I don't know.
That's insane.
Yeah. So she swears though, she was testifying that like he was arrogant, like Butch was arrogant. He was cocky and he did drugs and drank a lot, but she claims that like he was a really nice guy. There was other friends that like really defended him and said like, no, he was a nice guy. He wouldn't have done this. Like something had to have gone wrong. And then I didn't mention this in the story, but apparently he was kind of chubby as a child. We've been there, but I've had parents be rough on me for being overweight, and apparently, Big Ronnie was always like really on him, like about him being overweight. So that's actually how he got into drugs. Was Butch started taking a ton of speed and stuff to lose weight, and he did. I mean, at the time of the murders, he looked great. Yeah, he was really thin and stuff. But yeah, so I don't know if the drugs had anything to. I'm sure the drugs had something to do with it.
Without a doubt, I would say for sure that had some bearing on, I mean, anything that's going to impair your normal judgment, I would say, is going to have a stronger impact than just saying the mob did it or whatever. But that story about him possibly having a child and a wife is crazy. And how old was Butch when he did this?
23.
23. So I don't know. I feel like that might be a possibility, but and maybe you don't know. I'm sorry if I'm asking this, but this woman that came out, how shortly after this happened did she come out?
Not right away. Like it was
Years later.
Yeah, it was in the 80s she came out. And she had pictures and stuff. So she was definitely a part of their life in some way or another. I don't know that she was married to him. Why weren't they living together? It's all if that was the case. It was weird though. It was ironically though, from her pictures, and then unfortunately the crime scenes was how I was really able to see inside the house. And it was so adorable. It was like very 70s. They had like wallpaper in all the rooms, and all of the beds and stuff were really nice. So,
you love that shit.
I do love that shit. I was loving it. And so yeah, again, I promise I'm not going to go into the hauntings and stuff, but I will bring this up. I do still think this is one of the weirdest things about the Lutz family that would buy the house right after, is that for whatever reason, they bought a bunch of the furniture. Not for whatever reason. They claim it's because they didn't have furniture to fill the house. But they even bought the beds that the families were murdered in. Could you imagine making your kids sleep in that bed? Like, I don't know. That's all I'll say about the Lutzes and the hauntings. But
that's terrifying. And no, terrifying. I would not. Who would want, like you said, who would want that furniture? Take everything out. I don't even know.
It was cute, but no. Even I won't do that. Like, come on. But just to wrap everything up. So Ronald DeFeo Jr. actually recently died. He died in prison on March 15th, 2021. So last year he died at 69. It seems to just be like health related complications. Nobody shanked him or anything. He died of natural causes, still just telling his stories about what possibly happened. So a couple of his cellmates came out and were talking about all the stories, but then he'd like slip up and talk about killing them. So I think after doing my research, I definitely think he killed them. I don't know what led to him killing them.
Sounds like it. And now tonight I'm gonna watch the movie.
I actually was thinking I'm probably going to do that tonight too, because I was really trying to stay away from that side of the story at all, trying to keep it true crime. But I think there's a crime in there too, bringing your kids into that house in that situation. But
We'll have to talk offline about the hauntings for sure. And if
yeah,
our listeners want it, I think, it's October. It's about to be Halloween. Why not?
yeah. So let us know if you guys want it. No matter what, I hope you enjoyed this episode and I hope you're enjoying your Halloween season as much as I am. And we look forward to talking to you guys later.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks.